Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. Obviously, everyone is waking up to the shocking news of the U.S. bombing campaign on the Syrian government and Syrian military positions that just happened a few hours ago. A major world-changing event that, of course, is no shock to us. Told you that this military strike was imminent, even signaling the occult dates that this attack would happen, and predicted this horrible geopolitical mess and proxy/Cold War between Russia and the United States all the way back in 2014. And that's why in this video, we are going to tell you exactly what just happened, the response of the world, and of course, what to expect next. With, of course, this messy geopolitical situation and expansion of the proxy war and Cold War between Russia and the United States. Now, the latest information we're hearing is that around 9 p.m. Eastern on Friday, the 13th of April, Donald Trump ordered military strikes on Syria. He, of course, did not get congressional approval before launching this latest attack. Allegedly, these attacks were coordinated against chemical weapon sites inside of Syria and were undertaken in coordination with France and the United Kingdom. The United States is saying it did not coordinate these strikes with the Russian government and did not notify them that this attack was happening. And of course, we're hearing the complete opposite of that from the French government and even pro-Assad officials who said target bases were evacuated on warnings that were given out by Russia. The attack lasted for about 1 hour and sent over 100+ missiles to Syria, allegedly specifically targeting a scientific research center in Damascus, a chemical weapons storage facility located west of Homs, and a chemical weapons equipment storage facility and command post near the second target. There's other reports that a bomb did hit a civilian housing complex inside of Syria, with the Syrian state-run TV saying that 3 civilians were wounded in this attack. Other reports are coming in saying that this scientific research facility was actually a university inside of Damascus. Now, of course, many people are putting these U.S. bombings in question, mainly because if the United States was bombing a chemical weapons facility, that bombing would actually spread chemical weapons to the surrounding population and then in fact cause an initial chemical weapons attack, which would injure a lot of innocent people. From what I've seen so far, that question has not yet been answered by US officials about this specific attack. And there are photos and videos putting the Pentagon statement in question because missiles could be seen targeting multiple areas and not just the 3 that they listed. Now, of course, Syrian missile defense systems were active during this attack, specifically S-120 and S-200 old Russian military defense systems, which Russia is now bolstering, saying it will deploy S-300 and S-400 batteries all across Syria right now. And even though there is footage coming out of Syria of these air defenses actually successfully shooting down US missiles, the Pentagon now is claiming that all of their missiles reached their target. The Russians and Syrians are actually claiming that 71 out of the 103 missiles were actually shot down overnight. And obviously those 2 reports are directly conflicting each other, so obviously someone is lying here. It is also being reported that at the same time of these US airstrikes, radical Islamic terrorists and ISIS decided to take advantage of that air cover and launched the ground offenses near south of Damascus. This, of course, was reported by people on the ground there, which, of course, all of these sources will be available to you in our Steemit post, which will be posted in the comment section of this video, in order for you to fact check and verify everything yourself. And obviously, a lot of opposition voices to these attacks are saying that these attacks directly bolster and help radical Islamic terrorists, or so-called US-backed, quote, moderate rebels that are mainly Sunni Muslims and have committed atrocities beforehand. So that is just all the information we are hearing of the events that transpired. Obviously, more events will happen, which we will be following very closely on this YouTube channel. Now, the response from this is also very telling, especially from the US mainstream media. The corporate media, which is widely praising Donald Trump for these attacks, they are running with Pentagon statements that this attack was, quote, limited, targeted, and effective, saying that Trump was actually restrained and proportional with his response, and some outlets going as far as to say that this was a retaliatory strike, with a lot of people pointing out, well, Syria never really attacked the United States, and along with Russia has shown restraint to aggressive military action that even took place last year, almost to the date of when Donald Trump once again bombed the Syrian military facility. There's even video of a former commander of the British Armed Forces in Iraq that questioned the validity of these chemical attacks that spurred Donald Trump's bombardment, which of course he was cut off after shortly doing so by Sky News. And obviously through this entire conflict and even the build up to it, we saw headlines from mainstream media companies talking about how it's okay because the United States could win a nuclear war with Russia. We saw other headlines with them pandering and talking about how Donald Trump's approval rating gone up since the last time he attacked Syria. And obviously it's pretty clear from the information and disinformation / propaganda we've been getting who is in the pockets of the mainstream media, which of course do not highlight the opposition voices like we're doing in this video. Like opposition that we saw from Justin Amash, U.S. representative, who said that these attacks were unconstitutional, illegal, and reckless, and that we must follow the Constitution and let Congress decide what war the United States gets involved in. U.S. Senator Dick Black even said that America is on the brink of World War III because of these actions that have no clear agenda and put our military personnel at risk. Iran, of course, came out with a very strong statement saying that this was a violation of international law and ultimately that this was a criminal offense. China, of course, opposed the use of force in Syria. The Iraqi foreign minister actually came out and called these actions extremely dangerous, especially for the consequences for, quote, innocent civilians, which actually, from all the reports that I'm looking at, the United States actually avoided in committing with these bombings. But we are still waiting for the official numbers of casualties that came from these bombings. And obviously these latest actions put us on an unpredictable pathway and an expansion of the Cold War 2.0. But what we do know is that, of course, Russia will respond to these attacks. The Russians at the United Nations are saying that this is worse of a situation than was during the Cold War, a very dangerous one with obviously less communications between the United States and Russia. Now, obviously, we're seeing the war of words expand right now, with the Pentagon saying that there has been an increase of 2,000% of Russian disinformation online within the past 24 hours. And of course, this was a response to a reporter asking them whether they had any evidence that Assad used chemical weapons. The Russians have officially said that it was Britain that took part in a false flag Syrian chemical weapons attack that was blamed on Assad that justified this bombing. And obviously the US and UK are going along with that belief, saying that they will commit more military strikes if more chemical weapons are used inside of Syria, which of course has been a major issue of contention, with even some US administration officials saying that they have not been clear on who used the chemical weapons, what chemical weapons were used, and what actually transpired that led up to these events. Now, obviously, we are hearing two completely different sides of the story here, and that's why I wanted to ask you guys, what do you guys think actually happened here? Who's ultimately responsible? Please let me know in the comment section below, which of course I will be answering the first hour that this video is out. Now, of course, what will happen here from now on is very unpredictable. We know the Russians to be very unpredictable, especially with their foreign policy. We did see Syria and Russia show restraint last year when Donald Trump bombed Syrian military bases. And I think with this particular event, the same thing will happen. Russia and Syria are almost on the complete verge of a victory inside of that country. And they will become the power brokers that will decide the future of Syria, which Russia, Iran, and Bashar al-Assad want to decide. If they take the US bait here and respond militarily, they of course put that all to risk, which of course would predominantly benefit Israel and Saudi Arabia, who don't want to see an emboldened Iranian and Syrian presence right on Israel's border. But I think the bigger question that needs to be asked here is, how do these attacks actually benefit the United States? Even Donald Trump years ago said, before he was president, that bombing Syria only creates more debt and a possible long-term conflict, which of course we're facing. The estimated cost of this attack with these supposed smart missiles that Trump was tweeting about costs the American taxpayer about $200 to $300 million just on the missiles themselves, which, according to the Syrians, of course, were stopped by old Russian defense systems, S-120s and S-200s, that, according to them, stopped the majority of the bombs from dropping inside of Syria. And if you look at U.S. foreign policy, they do not have the best record when it comes to military interventions inside of the Middle East. This, of course, is something that Donald Trump railed against, especially when he was running to be president of the United States, and was one of the major factors why he was voted into office. And there's countless numbers of tweets and warnings from Donald Trump not to do this. And he's not only following, but expanding the horrible foreign policy decisions that were made by his predecessors, Barack Obama, and of course, Hillary Clinton. This is, of course, something that we personally warned you about even before Donald Trump took office and told you. What he says is great. Will he keep those promises? Very unlikely. Since obviously we learned from our previous lesson assassins with Barack Obama promising hope and change, starting the Syrian conflict and giving us the Libyan war, with George W. Bush promising to be a non-interventionist president, and then getting us into Iraq and Afghanistan. And whether it's a Democrat or Republican, U.S. foreign policy stays the same. But now it's only being expanded to very dangerous proportions. Sadly, other alternative media voices fell for the trap, some of them that are finally waking up and seeing Trump for exactly who he is. But honestly, it's hard to forget that and to trust him again, especially with their promotion of this delusion of grandeur and empowering him to be who he is right now. And of course, the same goes for the mainstream media, who obviously work for the military-industrial complex and just regurgitate propaganda lines to you every single day, which they blindly read with the scripts that they get without even questioning it. But hey, you already know that since you're watching this channel. And that's why I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. And of course, thank you from the bottom of my heart for everyone who supports us on wearechange.org/donate. Because of your donations that we're allowed to be totally free and independent and not have to cater to bipartisan bullcrap or regurgitate any lines from either a corporation or government. Stay tuned for more, because obviously things are just getting started here.